This is more than a wedding story. It's a chilling lesson in betrayal, silence, and consequences. A father who gave everything to his daughter is suddenly cast aside, branded a failure, and told he isn't welcome at the very celebration he funded. But instead of anger, he responds with calculation, freezing accounts, exposing illusions, and forcing a public reckoning. If the story gripped you, let us know where you're watching from in the comments. We love seeing our community from around the world. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss the next emotional story. My name is Richard Coleman. I'm 67 years old, living in a quiet house on Providence Road in Charlotte, North Carolina. After 35 years of working my way up from bank teller to branch manager at Truist Bank, I retired 2 years ago. I thought retirement would mean peace, time with my orchids, and the steady ticking of my antique clocks. But life has a way of reminding you that peace is fragile. It was a Friday evening when my phone buzzed. I was sitting in my living room, surrounded by the clock collection I'd spent decades building. Each piece told its own story of patience and precision. My favorite, a Swiss Longines from 1887, ticked softly on the shelf. I picked up my phone, expecting the usual update about seating arrangements or menu choices for my daughter's wedding. Instead, I read words that froze me in place. Dad, don't come to my wedding. Troy hates you. We don't want you ruining our day. I read it 3 times, hoping I had misunderstood, but the message was clear. My daughter Ashley, the child I'd raised alone after her mother left, the young woman whose education, apartment, and wedding I had fully funded, was telling me I wasn't welcome. For a moment, I felt nothing. No anger, no heartbreak. Just silence. Then something colder settled in. A calculation. A reminder of the trust accounts I had set up for Ashley when she turned 18. She thought the money was hers. She thought she had control. But she didn't. Not yet. I smiled. Not the warm smile of a father, but something sharper. By dawn, she would understand what betrayal costs. Ashley thought a single text could erase decades of loyalty. But she had no idea what her father had planned. The text from Ashley lingered on my phone screen like a scar. Pathetic failure. Words I never thought I'd hear from my own daughter. But instead of rage, I felt something colder, sharper. A clarity that only comes when illusions shatter. I walked into my home office. The quiet hum of the house surrounding me. File folders lined the shelves, untouched for months. Trust documents, bank statements, power of attorney forms, all the careful planning I had done for Ashley's future. Tonight, they weren't just papers. They were weapons. Ashley had no idea how those accounts worked. She thought the money was hers, free and clear. She never asked questions, never wondered why funds always appeared when she needed them. She didn't know that until she turned 35, I remained the trustee. I had full control. Every dollar she flaunted on social media, every dinner with Troy's friends, every designer dress, all that was mine to release or restrict. At 11:58 p.m., I picked up the phone and left a voicemail from Mark Davidson, my lawyer. Mark, it's Richard. We need to review Ashley's trust. Urgent. Then I called James Wilson, my old colleague at Truist Bank. We'd started as tellers together in 1988, climbed the ladder side by side. He answered groggy, but loyal. James, I need those trust accounts frozen. Technical review, 72 hours. Tonight, there was a pause. You're sure? Completely. By midnight, the accounts were locked. Every card linked to them would decline by sunrise. Every automatic payment would bounce. Ashley and Troy were about to learn what happens when comfort disappears. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the ticking of my watches. Each one marked time with mechanical precision. No emotion, no hesitation. Just steady movement forward. I thought of Ashley as a little girl, running to hug me after school, laughing at pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. I thought her graduation speech, where she said, "My dad taught me integrity matters more than appearances." That girl was gone. In her place stood someone who valued Troy's approval more than her father's loyalty. By dawn, she would understand the difference between appearances and reality. Ashley believed money was hers to spend freely. But by morning, she would discover the truth. The morning sun filtered through my kitchen window, casting light across the table where my coffee steamed. I hadn't slept much, but strangely, I felt rested. At 7:34 a.m., I picked up my phone. The screen glowed like a warning beacon. 43 missed calls from Ashley, 38 from a number I didn't recognize, likely Troy, 27 from other numbers, 10 text messages, each more frantic than the last. Dad, what did you do? Dad, our cards aren't working. Dad, answer your phone. This isn't funny. Please, I'm begging you. I read each message slowly, sipping my coffee. Then I turned the phone face down and made breakfast. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. I took my time, savoring every bite. Outside, the magnolia trees swayed gently in the morning breeze. By midday, the calls had multiplied. 118 missed calls. I counted them while watering my orchids on the back porch. The air was warm, carrying the scent of spring. A perfect day for gardening. A perfect day for lessons in respect. The doorbell rang at 2:20 p.m., followed by pounding on the door. I walked slowly through the living room, past the shelves of ticking watches, each one marking time with mechanical precision. Through the window, I saw Ashley's Honda CR-V parked crooked in the driveway, one wheel on the lawn. Her face was blotchy from crying. Mascara streaked down her cheeks. Troy stood behind her, his face red, veins visible on his neck. He looked like a man used to control, now stripped of it. Ashley pushed past me into the house. Dad, what did you do? Our cards aren't working. None of them. Troy followed, uninvited. Mr. Coleman, I don't know what kind of game you're playing, but this is ridiculous. We have a wedding to pay for. Do you understand that? I poured myself iced tea, letting them wait. Which account are you referring to, Troy? Ashley's voice cracked. Dad, please. The hotel needs a final payment today. $22,400. The caterer, the florist. Everything is falling apart. I set my glass down carefully. And whose money is in those accounts, Ashley? She froze. It's mine. You gave it to me. I gave you access. I corrected. There's a difference. Ashley thought she owned the money, but the truth was about to unravel, and Troy's confidence would begin to crack. Ashley stood frozen in my kitchen, her heels clicking nervously against the tile as she paced. Troy's face was flushed, his voice sharp. Mr. Coleman, Ashley has been using those accounts for years. That makes them hers. You can't just take that away. I poured myself another glass of iced tea, letting the silence stretch. Troy, you're mistaken. Those accounts aren't hers. Not yet. They're part of a revocable living trust. Do you know what that means? Ashley blinked, confusion spreading across her face. A trust? Yes, I said calmly. It means I'm the trustee. I have full discretion over every dollar until you turn 35. You're 32 now. That gives me 3 more years of authority. Troy stepped forward, trying to regain control. This is extortion. You can't just freeze her money. I smiled faintly. No, Troy, this isn't extortion. It's consequences. You both made choices. Choices of costs. Ashley sank into a chair, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Dad, you never told me that. You never said the money wasn't mine. You never asked, I replied. You just spent. College tuition, your apartment, your car, the wedding. All of it came from those accounts. And now, when you tell me I'm not welcome at your wedding, you expect me to keep paying? How does that work exactly? Troy's jaw tightened. We'll get a lawyer. Excellent idea. I said smoothly. I have one too. His name is Mark Davidson. He specializes in trust law. He's the one who set up these accounts 15 years ago. Maybe you should ask him about the terms. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. Dad, please. I'll apologize. Just us. Privately. I shook my head. No, Ashley. Public or nothing. You made your choice about me publicly in that text message. Now, you'll make your choice about the truth publicly. Stand in front of your guests and acknowledge who paid for your perfect day. Do that and I'll release the funds. Troy pulled her toward the door, his voice rising. We're not doing this. We'll figure something else out. I watched them leave, Ashley crying, Troy's anger boiling over. Their car sat in the driveway for 15 minutes as they argued. Finally, the tires squealed, and they were gone. I returned to my office, the ticking of my watches steady in the background. The game had just begun. Ashley thought apologies could erase betrayal, but Richard was about to show her that respect must be earned, and the next move would be his. The house was quiet after Ashley and Troy stormed out, but my mind was alive with calculation. Betrayal has a way of sharpening focus. I sat at my desk, surrounded by the ticking of my watches, and opened a fresh folder. If Ashley wanted to forget what I had given her, then I would remind her in numbers. On Monday morning, I met with Mark Davidson, my lawyer. His office overlooked uptown Charlotte, sunlight spilling across polished mahogany. He slid a thick folder across the table. Here's everything you asked for, Richard. 15 years of financial support, documented and categorized. I opened the folder. The first page was a summary. Duke University tuition, $127, 000 apartment down payment, $45, 000 vehicle purchase, $31, 200 furniture and household items, $18, $650 wedding deposits, $6, 500 monthly allowances, $72, 000 miscellaneous support, $15,000. Total, $327,450. I stared at the number. More than most people earn in 5 years. More than Ashley had ever earned herself. And she had spent it without hesitation, without gratitude, without respect. Mark, I said quietly, I want the trust restructured. From now on, no distribution without my written approval. No more automatic access. He nodded. That's your right as trustee. I'll draft the amendment today. It'll be effective by end of business. I left his office and walked to a downtown coffee shop. The aroma of roasted beans filled the air as I sat in the corner booth, sipping black coffee. This was the waiting part, the part where pressure builds before the next move. At 11 a.m., my phone rang. Ashley's voice trembled on the other end. Dad, we really need to talk. Troy's parents offered to help, but we're still short. $15,000 for final payments. Please, I know I was wrong. I shouldn't have sent that message. Can we move past this? Her words were desperate, but hollow. She wasn't apologizing for betrayal. She was apologizing for consequences. Move past this. I repeated. Ashley, anger is hot and temporary. Disappointment is cold and permanent. You chose to side with a man who called me a failure. That choice is a cost. The account stay frozen. I hung up before she could respond. That afternoon, I returned home and opened my laptop. The chessboard on the screen glowed, pieces arranged mid-game. I played against a stranger rated 1900, patient and precise. Chess teaches you that rush decisions lead to defeat. You wait. You observe, you calculate, and then you strike at the exact right moment. Ashley thought her father's silence was punishment, but Richard was only preparing his next move, and Troy's secrets were about to surface. By Wednesday morning, my phone buzzed with a call I had been waiting for. Sandra Miller, a former colleague turned private investigator, had agreed to dig into Troy Clarkson's background. Her voice was sharp, efficient. Richard, you're not going to believe what I found. I leaned back in my chair, the steady ticking of my watches filling the silence. Try me? Troy's company, Apex Digital Solutions, brought in about $220,000 last year. But his expenses? Nearly half of that. He's drowning. He's carrying a business loan of $187,000 at 9% interest. He's already missing payments. On top of that, 3 personal credit cards maxed out, $67,000 total. And here's the kicker. 6 months ago, he secured a $95,000 credit line to keep the business afloat. His father guaranteed it. I smiled faintly. Robert Clarkson? Exactly. Robert's a legitimate businessman, worth millions in property and development projects. But I'm seeing signs he's tired of bailing Troy out. He refused to guarantee another loan just last month. Sandra's words painted a picture I had suspected all along. Troy wasn't a visionary entrepreneur. He was a parasite, feeding off his father's wealth and now my daughter's trust accounts. His polished lifestyle, the BMW, the South Park office, the designer clothes, was nothing more than a house of cards. What about the office? I asked for $1,800 a month rent. He's 2 months behind. They're preparing eviction papers. His BMW lease? Late payments there, too. Richard, one strong wind, and the whole thing collapses. I let the silence stretch, savoring the confirmation. Troy had built his empire on appearances, not substance. And Ashley, desperate to belong to his world, had handed him access to everything I had built for her. Dig deeper into Robert, I said finally. Projects, loans, vulnerabilities. Whatever it costs. You got it, Sandra replied. When I hung up, I poured myself a glass of water and walked to the window. The oak trees in my backyard swayed gently, the same trees Ashley had played under as a child. She used to build fairy houses out of acorns and leaves, laughing as she showed me her creations. That little girl was gone, replaced by someone who valued Troy's illusions more than her father's reality. But illusions collapse. And when they did, Ashley would see the man she had chosen for who he truly was. Troy's empire was already crumbling. But Richard wasn't finished. The next move would bring Robert Clarkson, Troy's father, directly into the game. Thursday evening, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I let it buzz twice before answering. A calm, measured voice came through. Mr. Coleman, this is Robert Clarkson. I don't believe we've met, but our children are getting married in a few days. I was hoping we could talk. Robert Clarkson, Troy's father, the man who had guaranteed his son's failing business loans, the man who had built a legitimate empire while his son played at success. Mr. Clarkson, I said evenly, what can I do for you? Call me Robert. Listen, I'm not sure what's happening with Ashley's accounts, but Troy mentioned there's been some kind of freeze. My wife and I have covered what we can, but there are still outstanding payments for the wedding. Perhaps we could meet, work this out like reasonable adults. Reasonable adults. Interesting phrase, considering his son had called me a pathetic failure. Are you free tomorrow afternoon? I asked. 3 o'clock. Emily's Cafe on Tryon Street. I'll be there, Robert replied. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of scotch and walked to the window. The oak trees I had planted decades ago swayed in the evening breeze. Ashley used to play beneath them, building fairy houses out of acorns and leaves. That little girl had believed in loyalty. Now she believed in Troy. Robert Clarkson wanted to meet the father who had bankrolled his son's illusions. He wanted to negotiate, to smooth things over. But this wasn't about smoothing. This was about consequences. Friday arrived with sharp sunlight. I sat at Emily's Cafe, the aroma of roasted beans filling the air. At exactly 3 o'clock, Robert walked in, tall, silver-haired, dressed in a tailored suit. He carried himself like a man used to respect. Richard, he said, extending his hand, thank you for meeting me. I shook it firmly. Robert. We sat across from each other, two fathers bound by the choices of their children. He leaned forward, voice calm but edged with urgency. I don't know the details, but Troy tells me Ashley's accounts have been frozen. The wedding is tomorrow. Vendors are demanding payment. My wife and I have covered what we can, but we're still short. I was hoping we could resolve this. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence stretch. Robert, your son called me a failure. Ashley agreed. They told me I wasn't welcome at the wedding, yet they still expected me to pay for it. Tell me, how does that work? Robert's jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw the cracks in his composure. Robert thought he could negotiate like a businessman. But Richard was about to show him that this wasn't business. It was personal. Robert Clarkson sat across from me at Emily's Cafe, his tailored suit crisp, his silver hair perfectly combed. He carried himself like a man who had built something real, unlike his son who only borrowed appearances. Richard, he began, voice steady, I understand emotions are running high, but the wedding is tomorrow. My wife and I have already covered several expenses, yet there are still outstanding payments. I'd like us to resolve this, for the sake of our children. I stirred my coffee slowly, letting the silence stretch. Robert, your son called me a pathetic failure. Ashley agreed. They told me I wasn't welcome at their wedding, yet they still expected me to pay for it. Tell me, how does that work? Robert's jaw tightened. He leaned forward. Troy can be impulsive. He says things he shouldn't. But Ashley loves him. Surely you don't want her wedding ruined over a misunderstanding. I met his eyes. This isn't a misunderstanding. It's a lesson. And since you're here, perhaps you should know the truth about your son's empire. His brows furrowed. What truth? I slid a folder across the table. Inside were Sandra Miller's findings. Troy's debts, missed payments, maxed out credit cards, the $95,000 credit line Robert had guaranteed. Robert opened the folder, scanning the pages. His face shifted from calm to concern, then to something harder. He told me the business was stable. It's collapsing, I said evenly. The office rent is overdue. The BMW payments are late. His company is bleeding money, and he's been living off Ashley's trust accounts I control. Robert closed the folder, his hand tightening around it. For the first time, his polished composure cracked. I suspected he was struggling, but not like this. I leaned back. Your son saw Ashley as a lifeline. He thought her money was theirs. He thought I would keep funding his illusions. But illusions collapse. And tomorrow, when the wedding guests ask why payments failed, Ashley and Troy will have to explain who really paid for their perfect day. Robert exhaled slowly, his voice quieter now. You're not wrong. Troy has always leaned too heavily on others. I've bailed him out more times than I care to admit. Perhaps it's time he faced reality. I nodded. Exactly. Respect isn't optional. And tomorrow, everyone will see the truth. Robert had just learned the cracks in Troy's empire. But the wedding was only a day away, and Richard's silence was about to become the loudest voice in the room. Saturday morning arrived with a kind of golden light that makes you forget storms exist. Birds sang outside my window. The air smelled of magnolia, and my kitchen filled with the aroma of French press coffee. I sat at the table, calm, while my phone buzzed endlessly on the counter. 73 missed calls overnight, added to the week's tally, that made more than 200 desperate attempts to reach me. 47 text messages, 12 voicemails. Ashley's voice filled the recordings, shifting from panic to anger to desperation. Dad, please pick up. Dad, this isn't funny anymore. Dad, I'm begging you. The last voicemail was just sobbing. No words, only tears. Troy's messages were different, sharp, entitled, furious. You can't do this. This is illegal. My father will handle it. His tone carried the arrogance of a man who believed appearances could shield him from reality. Even Julia, my ex-wife, had called 8 times from Florida. Ashley must have broken down and told her. The hotel manager left 3 messages. The wedding coordinator 2. Vendors one after another. Everyone wanted answers, but I chose silence. There's a particular satisfaction in ignoring calls when others are screaming for your attention. Each unanswered ring was a reminder. Respect is earned, not demanded. I made breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice, and ate slowly, savoring every bite. Outside, the magnolia trees swayed in the breeze. The world was calm, even as Ashley's world unraveled. By mid-morning, I sat in my study with a glass of water, reviewing Sandra Miller's report again. Troy's debts, his failing business, his reliance on Robert Clarkson's guarantees. A house of cards collapsing under its own weight. Ashley had chosen him, chosen his illusions over her father's loyalty. And now, on the day of her wedding, she was watching those illusions crumble. The phone buzzed again. Another voicemail. This time, Robert Clarkson's voice. Calm, measured, but urgent. Mr. Coleman, this is Robert. It seems there's been some financial confusion. I've covered what I can, but there are still outstanding issues. Perhaps we could meet and resolve this like adults. I leaned back in my chair, listening to the steady ticking of my watches. Robert wanted resolution. Ashley wanted forgiveness. Troy wanted control. But none of them understood yet. This wasn't about money. It was about respect. and respect had a price. The wedding was hours away, and panic was spreading. But Richard wasn't done. His silence was about to teach Ashley and Troy their most painful lesson yet. The Valentine Hotel was dressed in white roses and string quartets, but beneath the polished surface, chaos reigned. Guests arrived in suits and gowns, unaware that the financial foundation of the day had already collapsed. Ashley's phone buzzed nonstop in her bridal suite. Her makeup artist tried to steady her trembling hands, but mascara streaks betrayed the hours of crying. Troy paced the room, his voice sharp, his face flushed. "Robert will fix this," he snapped. "My father always fixes things." Ashley's voice cracked. Dad froze the accounts. Nothing works. The florist called. The caterer's demanding payment. Even the hotel manager says the final balance hasn't cleared. Troy slammed his fist against the vanity. "We'll figure out. He can't just do this. It's illegal." But deep down, Troy knew the truth. His empire was already crumbling, and now the wedding was collapsing with it. Meanwhile, I sat at home, sipping coffee. The Charlotte Observer spread across my table. The Hornets had lost again. Real estate prices were climbing in Myers Park. Life continued as normal for everyone, except Ashley and Troy. My phone buzzed constantly on the counter, face down. I ignored it. Silence was my answer. Each missed call was a reminder that respect cannot be demanded, only earned. By noon, Robert Clarkson himself was making calls, trying to cover the gaps. His voice carried urgency, but even his resources couldn't patch the holes fast enough. The vendors wanted immediate payment. The hotel wanted assurance. And Ashley wanted her father's forgiveness. But forgiveness wasn't free. I walked to my study, the ticking of my watches steady in the background. Each one marked time with precision, reminding me that patience wins battles. I thought of Ashley as a child, building fairy houses under the oak trees. That little girl had believed in loyalty. Now she believed in Troy's illusions. The wedding was hours away, and panic was spreading like wildfire. Ashley's perfect day was unraveling, thread by thread, and I hadn't lifted a finger beyond a single midnight decision. The guests were gathering. The music was playing, but the foundation was gone. Richard's silence had already rewritten the wedding, and the next confrontation would decide everything. The wedding day had reached its breaking point. Guests were arriving at the Valentine Hotel, unaware that behind the scenes, panic was consuming Ashley and Troy. The florist demanded payment. The caterer threatened to cancel. The hotel manager insisted the final balance be clear before the ceremony. Ashley's hand shook as she adjusted her veil. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her voice hoarse from begging. Dad won't answer. He won't help. Everything is falling apart. Troy's anger boiled over. He's doing this on purpose. He wants to humiliate us. My father will fix it. He always does. But Robert Clarkson wasn't fixing it. He was watching his son's empire collapse, realizing Richard had exposed the truth. By mid-afternoon, Ashley drove to my house. Her Honda CR-V skidded into the driveway, one wheel on the lawn. She burst through the door, mascara streaked, hair disheveled. Troy followed, his face red, veins bulging at his neck. "Dad," Ashley cried, "please." The hotel needs $22,000 today. The caterer, the florist, everything is falling apart. Please, I'm begging you. Troy's voice cracked with fury. "Mr. Coleman, this is insane. You're ruining your daughter's wedding. Unlock the accounts now." I poured myself a glass of iced tea, calm as ever. "Ashley, whose money is in those accounts?" She hesitated. "It's mine. You gave it to me." I shook my head. "I gave you access. There's a difference. Those accounts are part of a trust. I am the trustee until you turn 35. You're 32 now. That means I control every dollar." Ashley's face crumpled. "Dad, you never told me that." "You never asked," I said quietly. "You just spent." Troy stepped forward, his voice rising. "We'll get a lawyer." I smiled faintly. "Excellent idea. My lawyer, Mark Davidson, specializes in trust law. He set up those accounts 15 years ago. He'll be happy to explain the terms." Ashley's tears fell freely now. "Dad, I'll apologize. Privately. Just us. I shook my head. No, Ashley. Public or nothing. You made your choice about me publicly in that text message. Now you'll make your choice about the truth publicly. Stand before your guests and acknowledge who paid for your perfect day. Do that and I'll release the funds. Troy grabbed her arm, pulling her toward the door. We're not doing this. We'll figure something else out. I watched them leave, calm, steady. The ticking of my watches filled the silence. The game was entering its final phase. Ashley thought desperation could soften her father's resolve. But Richard's lesson wasn't over, and the wedding itself was about to become the stage for truth. The Valentine Hotel shimmered with chandeliers and white roses. But beneath the polished surface, panic spread like wildfire. Guests mingled in the lobby, sipping champagne, unaware that the wedding itself was hanging by a thread. Ashley stood in her bridal suite, veil trembling in her hands. Her makeup artist tried to steady her, but the streaks of mascara told the truth. She had been crying for hours. Troy paced the room, his voice sharp, his movements restless. The vendors are threatening to walk, Ashley whispered. The florist won't deliver without payment. The caterer says they'll cancel. Even the hotel manager is demanding the final balance. Troy's face flushed red. My father will fix this. He always does. Richard can't just freeze the accounts. He's bluffing. But Robert Clarkson wasn't bluffing. He had already seen the truth in Sandra Miller's report. His son's empire was collapsing, and Richard had exposed every crack. Downstairs, whispers began to ripple among the guests. The string quartet played softly, but the tension was palpable. The wedding coordinator rushed between vendors, her voice tight with urgency. We need payment now. Otherwise, nothing moves forward. Ashley's phone buzzed again. Another message from me. Short, cold, final, public acknowledgement or nothing. Her hands shook as she read it. He wanted me to stand in front of everyone and admit it. Admit that he paid for everything. Troy's jaw clenched. We're not doing that. We'll find another way. But there was no other way. The accounts were frozen. The vendors demanded cash. Robert's patience was thinning. And Ashley's perfect day was unraveling thread by thread. Meanwhile, I sat at home, calm, steady. My watches ticked in unison, each one marking time with mechanical precision. I poured myself a glass of scotch, savoring the quiet. Outside, the oak trees swayed gently in the evening breeze. The wedding was collapsing without me lifting a finger. Silence had become my loudest answer. And soon, Ashley would have to decide, pride or truth. Ashley's dream day was crumbling, and the guests were beginning to notice. But Richard's demand still stood, and the choice she made next would change everything. The Valentine Hotel buzzed with restless energy. Guests were seated. The quartet played softly, but behind the scenes, panic was spreading like wildfire. Ashley's bridal suite had become a storm of tears and arguments. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from me. Short, cold, final, public acknowledgement or nothing. Ashley's hands trembled as she read it aloud. He wants me to admit it, in front of everyone, that he paid for everything. Troy's face flushed crimson. We're not doing that. He's trying to humiliate us. My father will cover it. But Robert Clarkson wasn't covering it. He had already seen the truth in Sandra Miller's report. His son's debts, his failing business, his reliance on Ashley's trust accounts. Robert's patience was thinning, and Ashley could see it in his eyes. The wedding coordinator rushed in, voice tight. We need payment now. The florist won't deliver. The caterer is threatening to leave. If this isn't resolved, the ceremony cannot proceed. Ashley's tears spilled over. Dad won't answer. He won't help. Everything is falling apart. Troy slammed his fist against the vanity. Then we'll walk out there and pretend nothing's wrong. We'll figure out later. But Ashley knew the truth. Pretending wouldn't save her wedding. Only her father's silence could break the illusion, and only her public acknowledgement could restore it. Ashley stood at the edge of her dream day, torn between pride and truth. But the choice was hers alone. The ceremony began late, tension thick in the air. Guests whispered as delays stretched on. The quartet played, but the music couldn't mask the unease. Ashley walked down the aisle, her smile forced, her eyes red from crying. Troy stood waiting, his jaw tight, his confidence cracking. Robert Clarkson sat among the guests, his expression grim. He knew the truth now. His son's empire was a facade, and Richard had exposed it. The officiant began, but whispers grew louder. Vendors hovered at the edges, demanding payment. The hotel manager stood near the back, arms crossed, waiting for resolution. Ashley's hand shook as she held Troy's. Her mind replayed my words. Public acknowledgement or nothing. She looked out at the guests. Friends, family, colleagues, all gathered to witness her perfect day. And she realized it was crumbling in front of them. Her voice cracked. Before we continue, there's something I need to say. The room fell silent. Troy's grip tightened on her hand, his eyes wide with panic. Ashley don't. But Ashley did. Tears streamed down her face as she spoke. This wedding, this day, everything you see here was paid for by my father. The man I told not to come. The man I called a failure. Without him, none of this would exist. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Robert Clarkson's face hardened. Troy's confidence shattered. And Ashley's truth hung heavy in the air. Ashley had finally spoken the truth. But Richard wasn't there to hear it. And his silence carried more weight than any words. 14141414141414141414141. I sat at home, the ticking of my watches filling the silence. My phone buzzed with new messages, but I ignored them. Ashley had made her choice. Public acknowledgement. The funds would be released. The wedding would proceed. But something had shifted. Respect had been forced into the open. Ashley had admitted the truth in front of everyone. Troy's facade had cracked. Robert Clarkson had seen his son exposed. I poured myself a glass of scotch, savoring the quiet. Outside, the oak trees swayed gently in the evening breeze. The same trees Ashley had played under as a child, building fairy houses out of acorns and leaves. That little girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who had learned, painfully, that loyalty is not optional and respect cannot be demanded. The wedding continued at the Valentine Hotel, but the illusion was broken. Guests whispered, vendors grumbled, and Ashley's smile never reached her eyes. Troy's confidence was gone, replaced by the shadow of debts and failures. And me? I didn't need to be there. My silence had spoken louder than any toast or speech. Respect had been restored. Consequences had been delivered. And the game was over. Ashley thought betrayal had no cost. But Richard taught her the truth. Respect is earned and consequences are inevitable.